Hi, welcome to another episode of My First Job. In India, students who opt for mechanical, chemical, or even civil engineering streams end up in IT, which is where the opportunities are. But it need not be that way at all. There are a number of options available to those who can go much deeper into their chosen field. Our guest today comes all the way from New Zealand. Vaibhav Garg is general manager at Renolds NZ and leads the entire business operations. He has over a decade of experience in manufacturing and FMCG environments. He qualified in mechanical engineering from AUT University, and as part of his current job, he improves existing processes, generates new business for the company, and solves problems that crop up both for customers and for internal teams. He has to ensure that the plant and equipment functions with minimal disruption. That involves building a culture of collaboration and innovation among teams, providing them with the necessary training and coaching to achieve collective goals. My name is Venugopal Nair. I head Ideascape, which is a company into branding, creative, and design. And every week we cover interesting career journeys in different professions. And every career journey is full of twists, turns, and insights. So I'm sure that today's journey with Vaibhav will be another interesting and episodic experience. So let's get Vaibhav on stage and talk to him. Hi, Vaibhav. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Manu. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. What is the kind of work that Reynolds does? What kind of company are they?
So Renault is a global company. It was first formed in UK, and they manufacture chains. These are
Okay.
industrial chains, timber chains, forestry chains, abattoirs like meat industry chains. And a part of our section is also hydraulics and couplings and
Okay.
gable. So heavy industry and mechanical, I guess, and manufacturing.
Okay. Okay. So, what has your early experience? You were born in India and then you immigrated to New Zealand somewhere during course of school. How long have you been in New Zealand now?
Too long. I think it's coming close to 2 decades in New Zealand, 20
Okay.
years almost. I was 14 years old when mom and dad and my sister we all moved to New Zealand. I guess for a
Okay.
better life, and thanks to my dad, obviously, for bringing me over. And that was where the journey starts, I guess, for the engineering world.
Okay. Okay. So, what are your early experiences in New Zealand like?
So my dad, he was a senior banker in in India, and then he had to do a shift in terms of a better education, I guess. One of the things that we found in New Zealand was the practicality in studies. So everything is a lot more hands-on. So even in terms of your career path, your mentors and your guides and your deans at college sort of like guide you which pathway you want to take. So me being a pretty hands-on person, I've always liked cars and I always like to get my hands dirty. This was like a perfect place to start off my engineering career, I guess, because I'm not reading books and stuff is quite nice, but I don't think that's me as a person. I like to kind of get in amongst it and see how things are actually happening. So for me to feel things is a lot better, and I think that's where being in New Zealand kind of gave me that edge and an advantage, I guess, to take my career off.
Okay. Okay. So, your interest in engineering was sparked quite early, or
Yeah. So since I think I was 2 years old, I always just liked cars, and
okay.
uh, I used to see any of the cars, and my mom tells me I used to know the name, the model, and so I always wanted to be an automotive engineer. That was one of the things that I first kind of wanted to start on my career as, and that sort of shifted to mechanical engineering at a later stage in my life.
Okay. Okay. What's it like getting into engineering college in New Zealand? Is the competition very tough, or is it a fairly easy process? How does it go? How do you go about it?
It is sort of tough. You have to have quite a lot of prerequisites to be able to get into engineering degree. So your maths, physics, chemistry needs to be at like a pretty high grade. I guess over here they call it merits and excellence. So you need to be sort of in that sort of bracket in order to crack through an engineering degree. And I think now 14, 15 years out of degree. But when I first got on, it was 240 credits, which is like a system that you need to, a point-based system, which you must meet in order to make it to the engineering side of the world.
Okay. So is there an entrance exam, or is it that each college or university has their own test for entry?
Yeah, so each college, like Auckland University of Technology, where I went, they had the prerequisites. And then they do like an interview process to see if you're the right candidate for being in this world. And I think that's from there they take you on, or they say like, hey, you have to work on a certain aspects of your skill sets before you can actually take on engineering.
Okay. So what do you like or dislike about the course? What kind of things were you doing to begin with?
I think I really enjoyed all the practical sides. And I mean, 4 years of engineering, it was really good. I really enjoyed it, but I think it was definitely a lot theoretical. There was lots of assignments, lots of exams, lots of tests, lots of theory knowledge that you have to kind of gather. I really think my engineering knowledge developed after coming out of degree, where I worked in a pulp and paper industry, and I worked in an avionics company. And then I really understood it a lot more, because then it's a lot more work-on experience you get. Whereas in the lecture rooms, it can sometimes get a bit more distracting, I guess, for the better say of word, I guess. And having that, like the work experience, which I had after my 4 years of engineering, that definitely helped me to grow my career further on.
Okay, so did you opt for mechanical, or did you consider some of the other streams which are available?
Yeah, so we had civil electronics. So first semester of engineering is sort of open for all. And then you can stream it to biomechanics, biotronics, mechatronics, chemical engineering, process engineering, and you can sort of diversify. And then for me, it was mechanical was definitely a no-brainer. Electronics I wasn't really good with, and my paper marks weren't really up to that standard anyway. So, and I think mechanical being closest to cars was definitely, and automotive was definitely a way forward for me, because we didn't offer automotive engineering in New Zealand at a academic level, I guess. There's diploma, and then there's certificate courses that you can do in automotive. But for like an automotive design engineer, that's a course that I sort of saw you have to go to Germany, and that was quite expensive. And whereas New Zealand, we kind of get the loans, the allowances for any person who sort of comes in here and holds a New Zealand permanent residency. The government sort of funds their courses, and then you can pay them back once you get your job. So for me, mechanical engineering was definitely a standout choice in New Zealand.
Okay. So what about something like biomechanics or mechatronics? Those were not, because those are emerging fields,
Yeah.
and
So
it's kind of cross-domain kind of
yeah,
field. But you
100%. I
felt
mean,
that your mechanical engineering is what you would be most interested in.
if I could do that step now, 10 years later down the line, I definitely would have picked up mechatronics, because that's where the world is evolving. Mechanical engineering is something that's always kind of evergreen work, because you can
Okay.
transfer a lot of your skill sets to different roles. But yeah, if I could do it all over again, I think I definitely would try to go for mechatronics engineering. That's my
Okay.
recommendation would be to like younger audiences out there, is definitely go through mechatronics if you can take that course on.
Okay. Okay. So you finished your, what do you say, 4 years, and then was a career kind of on your mind as to what you wanted to do or which company you wanted to join? Were there certain things that went through your mind, or you took it as it came? You said, let me finish this first and then see where it goes.
I mean, as a graduate engineer in your fourth year, you're just basically worrying about placements, and you're just like, someone just picked me because, like there's a lot of, I guess, competition out there, and a lot of people are going for the same roles, same interviews, and your classmates are trying for the same roles. So it was pretty competitive at that stage, but you're just hoping you find an opportunity which will come your way. And there were preferences, I guess. There were some of the global players which I wanted to kind of reach out and get those, which I did get later on in my life. So Fonterra Brands is one of the biggest companies in New Zealand, and at that time I didn't get the graduate program, but later on in my life, once I had the work experience, I did join that company. So it was once you finish your degree or you're in the last year, you're just hoping someone will pick you and you can kick someone to give you that chance, I guess, to start your career off. And I guess I was lucky. I found a mentor, and he took me on.
Okay. So do you have these internships every year, or did you intern at a different place, 2 or 3 places before you figured out your position here?
So it's actually interesting in New Zealand. Like while you're doing your engineering, you can take up sort of voluntary work and at a factory, anything along the same lines as a mechanical or mechanic sort of background. So I took a couple of roles on where I was a factory worker in one of the roles, in my earlier roles, and there used to be big steel beams which I had to cut and lift them, load them, drive a forklift, which is pretty full on hands-on, buffer them out, grind them out, take out all the rust from these beams that they're sitting out in the rain. That was one of the really interesting roles which I did, and I think it really gave me good exposure and being close to the ground with the guys. And one of the other roles I did was there used to be a plastic injection molding company which used to make handles for coffins. So I was again a machine operator, die setter operator over there, and setting up the machines in the morning, and you just go through the rounds, spray painting them, the handles, varnishing the little handles that go on the coffins. So that was a good experience again. And I mean, those are the kind of sectors I didn't really know how much you can be involved as a mechanical engineer, or how far mechanics actually go, that you can actually be any moving part around you, you're sort of involved in. So that was really good experiences I think I had, and I was lucky to have them. And it was voluntary work, and can you get your hours.
And did you intern at at Renolds before you joined them, or which was your first job? What was your first job like?
After my degree?
Yeah, after engineering.
So after engineering, I got a job as a project engineer at a pulp and paper plant. So basically installation of machineries, different types of projects, creating a wash bay, for example, for a forklift washdown area where the oil and water can be separated. I think in my 2.5, 3 years over there, I did projects which were worth from 50,000 New Zealand dollars all the way up to 20 million New Zealand dollars. So because it wasn't in like one of the main cities of New Zealand in Auckland, it was kind of far away. Not many people used to prefer that. But that really helped to sort of take my career to the, I guess, greater heights, because, you got a lot more exposure in being in these heavy plants, I guess.
Okay. So how long were you in your first job, the company that you joined?
So SAT, back in the days, it used to be called Acelio Care. I was there about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember things that happened on the job? What are the kind of things that fostered learning, and what are the experiences that you remember from your stint over there?
So because you learn as a project engineer, you have to know every single thing. All the stakeholders are involved in with you, what you're doing. You need to be sort of like an orchestra, choir player, and everyone needs to sort of like understand when one operation finishes and the second operation starts. What time is your plumber coming? What time is your civil engineer coming? What time your surveyors are coming? Carpenters are coming. So I think that organizational sort of skills were really embedded in me in that stage, because every sort of moving part is kind of your responsibility, and at the same time all your stakeholders and all your shareholders for the project need to be well kept in loop as well about what's the progress of the project, where we at with the cost of the project, and so all those finer details kind of get embedded at that stage. And because I was a young engineer, like I think I used to do 12 to 14 hours, because in the place I was, it was only machinery, I guess. There was not much social life, so I used to spend a lot of time at work in my early days. Yeah.
Okay. But what about the transition? Did it feel different? There is this thing where you're starting in college and life is at one particular kind of. And then
Yeah.
when you move into a job, it changes dramatically because there is a sense of expectation about what the job will be like and what it ultimately turns out to be. So, in your case, where were the adjustments that you had to make in terms of expectations versus reality?
Yeah, I guess so I was living in a city which was quite rural, I guess. So now, as a graduate engineer or as a engineer, you don't have a lot of money at that time, but you now have the money, but you can't really spend it because I was in a place with not a lot of social activities, I guess. That was one side of it. Then being away from family because I was about 400 kilometers away from parents and stuff as well.
Okay.
So away from all of that. Work wise, I think I was sort of really lucky because of the mentor I had, and the way he sort of guided me about the projects, because he's been in the game for 25, 30 years when I think he took me on. So his experience really helped. And he sort of was there at every step of the way to guide me, I guess, which is, I think, where really it really helped me to grow as a project engineer in that time. And I think at the same time as well, he did give me a lot of freedom as well. So if I did make mistakes, like, he wasn't one for like, like, hey, you've screwed up. It was more like, how are you going to solve this problem now? And I think one of the things he did used to say was like, there's always a way, because in engineering, there's always a way. So you have to just find out a different angle, and I'm sure you come by with a solution. So that was quite good in terms of like having that support over there in engineering as well.
Yeah. Those are typically the struggles that you have to overcome and then figure things out as you go along. Okay.
Yeah.
And so living by yourself, you said you moved out of home, right? And then, so you
Yeah.
had to learn to sort of fend for yourself. And it's normally either in college or at working on the job where you first learn, oh, things don't appear magically on the table.
Yeah. So I did really miss my mom at that time when I moved away from the home, because I really, I guess, found the importance of having this motherly figure in my family in life. And then, like, yeah, she used to have video calls with me and trying to explain me how to cook and what you need to do, and how to make a curry, for example. Because all I knew before that was how to make the 2-minute Maggi noodles, and that was all I knew. So, and
That's the
quite,
normal expertise level with most students.
yeah. So that was, I was like, takeaways can't really be doing that every day, and I think it's time to go to the supermarkets, because that's one thing I really didn't like with the passion. Going
Yeah.
to get vegetables and then cooking it and cleaning it. I'm like, so much time is getting wasted. But I think all these are essentials where your parents play a big part, and of you growing up, and you don't really realize that at that stage.
Yeah. No, the amazing part is that even though it's relatively simple today compared to, let's say, 20 or 30 years ago, and you're in a developed country, so obviously it's easier, but
Yeah,
it's still a massive change in terms of how your personal outlook and
yeah,
a schedule and having to plan things that you never had to do on your own earlier. So that
yeah.
is definitely one of the changes that takes time to get used to.
Yeah, I remember mom used to send me like parcels of food, like sometimes, and I'll get like all
Right.
the ghar ka khana, and I'm like, oh wow, this is like, there's more than like 24 carats of gold, I guess, at that time.
Yeah. So suddenly ghar ka khana becomes really important.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. So I'll just so you're listening to the My First Job podcast. I'm speaking to Vaibhav Garg on the career in mechanical engineering, and he spoke of how he got attracted to mechanical engineering. What are the kind of challenges that he faced on the job, on the at during the education phase? What are the kind of internships? What are the things that mentally he had to shift in terms of moving from education into a job? So, in the next installment or the next phase of this podcast, we'll be speaking to him about what jobs are available in mechanical engineering and what kind of a mindset you need to have in order to succeed in a job that asks you to be fairly clear about a whole lot of mechanical concepts and practical work, which is one of the things that Weber was already emphasized. So, Vaibhav, what do you think are the kind of areas that people who get into a career in mechanical engineering have to be ready for, and what should they prepare themselves for?
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty big loaded question because mechanical engineering could be quite broad. But there's a lot of different fields where a lot of the skill sets could be transferable. So process engineering, mechanical engineering, like design work. If you in process engineering, obviously going back in the step is if you're working at an FMCG and you need to create some sort of improvement or efficiencies in the line, that's sort of one work you can work on.
So, give me
Then
a couple of examples. Give me things that you had to do and the challenges that you faced, anything that was actually going on, and what were the kind of challenges? What was the brief given? How did you work on it? And what were the results that you got?
Yeah, sure. So one of the projects that I worked on was as a reliability engineer, which is again a new field in engineering. I mean, not so new now, probably 15, 20 years. But that's basically finding out problems in a fast-moving consumer goods plant and working on the small glitches and working on a strategy so you can overcome these small breakdowns and similar stoppages. For example, if it's a sensor that's faulty and it's always triggering at the same point, um, why is that happening? What's the reason it's happening? Is the sensor right? Is the sensor the correct sensor for that line? Maybe does it have some dust on it? Like, has someone actually gone into the in-depth analysis of why is a certain production line not working as it's meant to be? Um, so you have to come up with a lot of different ways to address that same issue, and you go through like a almost like a tree analysis, and you come down to which is the way, what's the reason this problem is coming up, and you eliminate the processes which are working well, and you come up with a list of reasons why it could be a problem. Then you engage a maintenance engineer into that problem, and you sort of like look through and solve those issues, and then see if your lines are actually working a lot better now, and then you monitor that. And once it's sort of like, I think one of the things that we used to do in this dairy industry was plan, do, check, act. So you plan, then you do, then you check, and then you sort of like act on it, like, basically just keeping up to how everything is performing. And if there's any corrective actions you need to put so that that problem doesn't come up again. That was one of the things that we did in order to improve this line. And this particular example was related to a yogurt making machine. So when I was at the dairy farm, it had these yogurt pots. It fills up the yogurt, seals up the yogurts, cut them in 6 packs of 6, and then it goes away. And then what we had to just sort of work out on these similar different areas of stoppages, which we can improve in order to overcome this problem as well. So that was one of the examples, I guess, from the dairy line.
Okay. So let's say you discuss this. Like you said, process engineering involves a lot of first trying to figure out where the problems are, and then you arrive at elimination of certain options. Now, you have people with various kinds of experience who are part of the team. So, how do you arrive at the way forward based on, is it the head of the business who takes the call on what actually needs to be implemented, or do you implement some things at a smaller level to see what is happening and then present the options?
I think being the way I am, like I've always taken charge. So if I've found an issue, then I just go like, full into it. And it's then, I mean, obviously you have to go through the right political channels as well, because you don't want to shoot things, and you have to not upset people around you. um,
Right.
but you have to be sort of politically correct, but at the same time you need to, if you think and if you believe this is the solution for your problem, you sort of take the lead and take the charge, and actually come up with the ways, maybe present it in front of all the different stakeholders, that why do you think this strategy might work. So that was one of the things that I used to do. And I think good thing in New Zealand is, like, engineer, and I think probably global engineers can come up with a lot of strategies which they can present to management, and that could be quite receptive most of the time if you have a clear understanding and goal of where you want to get or achieve. Yeah.
Right. Now, where I was coming from is that typically solutions, okay, creative solutions, I think it's very subjective,
Mm.
but a solution which is on the shop floor, or something which is involved in a process, you can actually measure the difference before and after. You
Yeah.
implement something, you make a change, and you can instantly see if the effect is there or it's not. Whereas when you come in from marketing, or let's compare this to a new business development, you could make 20 calls or 30 calls, and only two of those actually translate into the next level, as
Yeah.
opposed to making a change in processes and then seeing that change improve dramatically. But
Yeah.
maybe there are other problems which will crop up, which is not predictable at that point.
That's
So,
true.
how do you okay, so like you said, you have this thing of taking charge. You'd like to go ahead and implement things, which is a great thing to, and the confidence to be able to pull it off and then pursue it. So, how would you handle objections? Let's say somebody who's not convinced that that is the way forward. What would your solution be, or how would you tackle something where, let's say, it's a senior person, and you know that that person has probably not understood what you're trying to say. What was
Yeah.
your way of tackling the internal dynamics?
I mean, those used to be pretty tough, I guess, because when you're a young graduate engineer, or like you're still quite early on in your career, it's hard to convince people at that stage. So sometimes it could be pretty challenging. Um, but I think one of the things I would do is at least have a one-on-one to discuss, hey, where do you think your problem is? Or do you not understand what sort of strategy am I coming from? Or is there something that you would like me to explain a bit further? Or maybe I'm completely wrong. And I'm not afraid to, I guess, say if I'm wrong, I'll just, be like, oh yeah, I understand that. And maybe I should come up with another strategy, because I think the way I am is pretty passionate. Like, so it's not like about an ego battle at the end of the day. It's more about like coming for a solution for the company so that it, like you can improve something for it. So yeah, that will be one of the things that I would do in my early days. Also, like, it takes a lot of like inner mentoring and self development as well, because at that time you probably are a bit more what's the word, like more aggressive, or you want to just be like, hey, I just really want to prove myself.
Okay.
So it could be a few internal dynamics that you have to kind of overcome, but like later on those things make a lot more
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because these are parts of a career that a lot of people think that it's just, I'm given a job. In fact, even the very concept of what a job is can change so dramatically depending on what you're tackling at that particular point in time. At some
Yeah.
point, it's a conversation with someone. At some point, it's thinking of what is the proposal? How do you put that whole thing together?
Yeah.
At,
Yeah.
at some other point, it's persuasion. So it's never about this whole thing which comes under the umbrella of work
Yeah.
is so dispersed, I mean, so diverse, and you'll find that there are certain things you're good at and certain things that you dislike doing, but you still have to do it.
Yeah. It's part of the
So
motion.
we
Yeah.
were, yeah. I just want to come back to, so what are the parts that were difficult for you to sort of get a? Where did you feel that things were slowing you down, and you felt that maybe if this was easier, then I could get things done faster.
Yeah. I guess sometimes, even though engineering is broad and you are sort of restrained with a lot of systems, there's different ERP systems, there's different maintenance systems. For example, when I was at a reliability engineer in Fonterra, all the different assets and different machines that are in your plant were not really, I guess, translated the same way into the system. So if there's a breakdown, and it's a pretty big plant, it's got like yogurts happening at one place, milk processing at one place, UHT, which is like your carton packages going at one place. If those machineries and those assets are not listed into that system, and where that breakdown happened, or a problem happened, or how to actually minimize that problem, having that same sort of transition into the system was not really there. And then that used to create a lot of confusion for production teams and engineering teams. And those are like certain like real life examples, I guess, where you want the world to be perfect, but it's not. And then you have to take each step, one step at a time to actually find things. And that's one thing I've learned, like, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you have to sort of like work your way towards systematically to a one problem at a time, and sort of like just keep narrowing it down and keep working on those tasks. And then, slowly you'll start seeing those results. So that was one of the things, I guess, which I challenges.
So give me an example of a production crisis that probably cropped up unexpectedly. And what was your response to that? How was it tackled? What are the kind of things that you looked at?
Yeah. So the good example would be from, I guess, my pulp and paper days, because you're working on a big $10 million project. A crisis would be, you're expecting a delivery of these big couple of Potacom buildings, and they need to arrive at a certain time, and they need to be placed at a particular spot with a concrete pad or something, for example. And the concrete pad is not being laid out because it rained yesterday, so it's not completed yet. But yet you need to get that delivered, and you need to get that placed because you had a set deadline, so you can get the office staff into these Potacom offices, I guess. So those were like one of the examples or one of the problems which we had to deal with, and come up with a bit of a solution of how we're going to navigate through this crisis and make sure like everyone is still happy. And so what we had to do, I guess, at that stage was get the delivery in, and we had to have some sort of like temporary arrangements for the office staff, had to get the placement of these Potacoms delivered to a different location, which was already set up with the concrete pad, reroute the freight company at a week later's time, get the concrete laid out, and then put these office blocks in. So yeah, it's you can plan a lot of things, but yeah, on the day of a project engineer, like things could really change, and you have to just think on your feet and come up with a solution.
Okay, if you're in an office job, it was, I think, much easier during COVID. But New Zealand was not. During the first phase of COVID, they managed to keep it down, so life was not affected. You were able to go to the plant and go ahead and work like normal.
Yeah, so we engineering was classified as the critical workers, or I can't remember the word now. There was some sort of services to the critical operations or something. So we were still able to operate because I was working at a company called Machinery Maintenance Plus at that stage, and we used to do a lot of food manufacturing plants, maintenance and projects. So obviously people were not stopping to eat, even though the COVID was on, and we were still able to sort of carry on with our normal duties and keep the ball running, I guess. It was a lot less volume of work, but it was still, like you had to kind of like keep on toes if something does happen and just overcome those issues.
Okay. So does your job involve being on the production line most of the time? Do you have to travel? How has your job changed over the years?
So now, I guess in the last few years of my life, it's transitioned from an engineer to a lot more, I guess, senior management and executive roles. So my current role, I'm coming close to 1 year, and it's a general management role, which is still running an engineering company. But it's also looking at the bigger picture, the making sure that we are growing revenue, making sure we are still growing it in sales, making sure our KPIs are met like as an overall organization because it's looking after entire New Zealand operations. So yeah, that's where my I guess a little bit of my skill set has shifted in the last few years since I've taken these operations manager, general management sort of roles. And traveling is there, yes, because Renault is a global company, and we've got factories in like across the globe, I guess Spain, UK, America, India as well, actually in Tamil Nadu, which is good. And
Okay.
yeah, in Gundalur. So hoping one day I can come and see that factory as well. And yeah, like traveling is there because you want to see what's new in the world, what's new in terms of the chain world. Because chain could be usually when I was not even part of Renault, I used to think chain is probably more like the bicycle chain. That's what we'll be sort of like working on and improving. But like when you come into these industries and you realize that like wow, chain is actually everywhere. Like it's in the elevators, it's in the tunnel freezers, it's in the meat industry, it's in timber industry, cutting logs, carrying logs, and bucket elevators, theme parks like so Disney World and everything of the world's Renault chain is actually used in those sort of fields as well. So it's quite yeah, quite a unique brand, I guess. And being part of that, I definitely feel quite blessed to be able to see some of these new developments and innovations in the chain world.
Okay. So, in terms of one of the issues that I think companies in the West or the developed countries have is that their price points are invariably much higher than the markets which they need to tap into, which
Mm.
is, let's say, it's in Africa, it's in India, it's in China, and China is obviously a major competitor to a whole lot of industries.
Yeah, yeah.
So, is keeping costs down, does that get to be part of a very important aspect of the equation? Because if you want to
Yeah,
expand your market, you need to be out there in a place where the costs are competitive.
yeah, it's a bit of a catch 22, I guess, because you want to
Yes.
grow and you want to compete with your competition, and you want to also increase your margins, but at the same time, you want to keep your costs down and you want to grow in sales. So it's a balancing act, I guess. You want a bigger market share, but yeah, the Chinese exporters or suppliers into our New Zealand market is quite a lot here, and the market share is sort of split across quite a few different industries. So tapping into these customers or end users could be pretty challenging. But I think that's where we have a bit of an edge because Renault is a chain manufacturer. So instead of just a supplier or an exporter or importer, it's more actually giving a more technical solution to the end user. And I think that's where, as a company, even globally, we grow quite a lot. And I think that's where in New Zealand right now, I'm trying to, educate my staff and even like the bigger players is that, we can really do a lot in New Zealand because having that global name to our us really gives us an advantage over like some of the competition that we have in the market. So yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty hopefully work in progress at this stage, but we can get a bigger market share like any general manager will want.
Okay. Great. So I'll just, yeah. You're listening to the My First Job podcast. I'm speaking to Vaibhav Garg, and he's spoken about what it's like to work on production lines and then transition into sales and figure out how to work in global markets and how to uh, travel and get things done in different places. And that's essentially what we'll be talking about in the final segment as we move into this, where we look at what does it mean to be in mechanical engineering at a production at an entry level, and then what are the prospects as you move up the line, and what kind of planning you can do in order to ensure that 30 years, 40 years, or 30, 35 years into a career, what are the things that are available to you? So, Weber, what are the entry level salaries that typically happen in uh, your business, and what are the kind of prospects for advancement?
So in New Zealand, starting or entry role could sort of vary from 30,000 to 50,000 New Zealand dollars. I mean, that's when I sort of started off. So one of my first jobs was $30,000, and yeah, like I mean, I think the good thing in engineering is you can always keep moving up the ladder if you have the right attitude, I guess. Um, and if you are willing to learn, there's salary is not the objective. I think at that time when you're a young engineer, cracking into the first industry, I think is definitely the key. And then just sort of developing and working through that, because I think a lot of younger like people, even my sister, she wants to get the top dollar now, whereas I think it's a bit of a step and work in progress, and then you sort of like work your way through these rounds, and then you get up to the positions, I guess, which you desire. And but it's a process, I guess.
So when you talk to your cousins in India and back in India and out there, do they
Yeah.
think that salaries in New Zealand are much better than what it is in India? Obviously, the connection difference in the
Yeah.
pricing, of course, does make
Yeah.
a big difference.
It does, but I think the cost of living here is quite expensive as well. So it's the proportion to what I felt in New Zealand versus India. Like your salaries could be, if you convert that into New Zealand dollar into Indian, might look really big, but then your rentals and your car insurances and your electricity is a lot more expensive
Yeah.
as well. So the cost of living kind of like offsets your salary a little bit.
So-called advantage that you have in terms of the overall, if you were just to consider base packages and then see where it's going.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of advancement, what were the kind of things that you focused on in order to ensure that your career was advancing, and in terms of a salary you were looking at, what were the things that you focused on in order to grow on the job?
I think it was a bit of a natural sort of progression. Like usually if I get interested in something and then I just sort of keep working through it, working through the motions. But a lot of the times in my career, I've been headhunted from a job to job. So it's not like I was looking for a change, but an opportunity presented itself on
Okay.
LinkedIn or Seek or Recruiter. And then I've just made that change organically. And it could be sort of like a time where usually this time of the year in New Zealand, kind of things start slowing down a little bit from December, Jan, Feb, March. And that's when I've usually changed my roles, I guess, because if things are getting a bit stagnant, it gives me a reason, I guess, to not really look for, right? An opportunity just presents itself, and then I just take it on, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a pretty varied career, I guess. I started in the paper industry, then I moved to the dairy industry, then I did a bit of glass industry, then I was running an engineering consulting company, which was different, smaller FMCG players. So it's never been a shortage of like learning, I guess. I've just every day seems to be something new that I've learned in the last 10 years, which I guess keeps it pretty fresh and keeps it interesting.
So long term, would you prefer to work in a large company, or you like the entrepreneurial or the buzz of a small company? Which is, what do you think is, are
I
you
think,
weighing stability versus long term prospects, and what is
yeah,
it that is important to you?
yeah. I mean, I think now in my life, and I'm like 33 years old and have a kid who's 3 years old. Having this sort of like work-life balance definitely helps, because in the job before this was a lot of long hours, stress of making sure that job is always rolling for the guys who are reporting to me and under me, and making
Right.
sure I've always got work for them. Whereas working for a bigger, large organization, there's a lot more resources, there's a lot more systems, there's a lot more structure, I guess, which I really enjoy. And I definitely get like a lot more work-life balance now, and having a bit more flexibility. So that's why me and my wife both sort of moved into a bigger organizations into our 30s, like, or early 30s, because it just really helps with the managing everything, I guess, in terms of your life, but also your working career. So keeps it good.
Yeah. But Isn't it also true that in a smaller company, because of the breadth of work that you do, you learn much faster? You learn a
Yeah,
lot more?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. So even the first company that I worked for, it was a small startup engineering company.
Yeah,
So you learn a lot. You because you're basically doing everything
yeah,
and you're part of like each and every operation, whether it will be payroll, whether it will be spare management, or whether it will be like admin, or whether it will be picking up something from somewhere. Like you're basically doing it all. And I think you learn a lot of things. You learn life as long as, and also, like your work life as well, but you learn overall like how to deal with
right,
people as well. So yeah, that's I think it's a pretty good thing.
right. So, do you think you'll ever shift over to a different sector altogether? Because the reason I'm saying this is, let's say 30 years ago, you started in one company, you worked your entire career in that company, or,
Yeah.
50, 60 years ago, and you retired from the same thing. Uh,
Yeah.
So it was taken that if you join a bank, you kind of retired in the bank, or if you joined an industry, you would stick with that. If it was an automotive company, you would stay with that company for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Now, that is no longer the case. So, what
Yeah.
has the impact been of technology, and what do you think is the way forward for the next 10 or 15 years for you? Because I know it's going to be difficult to project far ahead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, similar, like, the mindset when I first graduated, I was like, I'm going to work in this company for at least 10 years. That was my first, when I got the
Right.
job. But yeah, I think things are constantly evolving right now in the world, and everything is moving at a really fast pace. So learning opportunities a lot there. There's a lot more different platforms. There's AI coming up in, this world now, and technology 4.0. So there's a lot more faster growth right now, and you kind of have to keep up the learning spree and keep up with the newer times. And or if you're in a position in a management role where you implement those sort of changes yourself and influence the people around you or under you, so they can start seeing things in a bigger way. And I think
Okay.
that's probably the way forward for me, I guess, in the next near future. Anyways, like currently I'm really enjoying the role that I'm in, and there's a lot more things that I need to be learning. So, and I see a lot more growth and potential in the company in New Zealand market for what I'm doing. So I'm quite happy, I guess, with, if that'll be the word to use in terms of finding the right balance of everything at this stage in my life.
Okay. So let me ask you a trick question.
Okay.
Do you think that when you're enjoying yourself and your job is a point at which it is peak satisfaction, or is it that when you're finding something very challenging and then you're solving that issue is a place where you'll either get to learn a lot more or you'll get to handle things which are not within your comfort zone? What I'm saying is, do comfort zone become uh, places which restrict you, or do they become places that you're very aware of what you're capable of and what you can deliver? And that's a
Yeah.
good place to be in.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Yeah, I think so. So previous to my job, like before starting at Renol, I was almost coming close to 3 years at a company, and I think I was sort of slowing down in terms of, um, and I think the problem was also the New Zealand economy at that stage was slowing down. A lot of the projects were taken down, but I felt in myself that I was used to always constantly say to my wife that I feel like I'm going in a bit of a cruise control mode right now. Like, I'm not developing myself. My career seems to be flatlining a little bit, and that was a bit of a concern for myself. And yeah, I mean, this opportunity did come up, so I took it with both hands. But yeah, I felt comfort zone is something which really scares me, I guess. Like because I've always been hardworking and hungry, and what's the next thing to do for me? And I mean, even at this stage where I am doing what I'm doing, at the back of my mind, there's always that thing that, okay, how do I grow myself? How do I improve myself? How do I actually influence more people? How do I actually take on bigger roles? And the management team that I have right now above me, and the executive team, and I see these people in big board meetings and room meetings, and then I feel like I've got a long way to go and I can learn a lot from these people. So then it kind of gives me a lot more comfort. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
definitely was feeling a bit, like in a bit of a comfort zone in 1 year ago when I didn't have this role. And I was feeling like, am I learning? Where's my education? Like, am I still training myself to keep up in the world? So there's a lot more questions in my head at that time about my work life.
Okay. So you've spent what, about 10, 12 years now on the job?
Yeah, 10, 11 years. So 2013, I think I must have graduated. Yeah, it's been 11 years now as a
Yeah.
graduate.
Okay. So what do you think is one of your biggest takeaways from uh, the student phase to the working phase? Because you have still another two-thirds. It's almost, you've just done about 30% of your career. You still have another 70, 60 odd percent to go. So
Yeah.
what is it that you think will be important to you in the next few years? And how are you planning to slot it? Are you planning to look at something which will take you away from this? Or do you think that this has enough for you for the next 20 years to explore?
Yeah, I think it's a journey, I guess. I'm still working. I'm still trying to understand what my end goal is. But I
Right.
still believe in the next 10, 15, 20 years, there's a lot more hard work that I need to put in, a lot more hours I need to put in. I need to keep learning a lot more. I think engineering is a place where you can keep learning every day, which is quite unique as well in itself, anyways.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there's a lot more I need to give into, like this industry, and I don't know where my world or life will be in the next 10 years, I guess. But I think I still have a long way to go in order to actually know like this is something where I would want to be. Like I don't think I'm, like there's a long thing of long list of things that I still need to achieve, I feel, in my
Yeah.
professional life. And I think one of the things that I really have on my back of my mind is thinking of doing my master's. So I've been lucky, I guess, in terms of getting these roles. But having the MBAs and the masters in project management are certain things which really elevate you to a different level on itself, because again, that's education. So work experience is great, but I think that's having that ticket really is something which I need to kind of work towards as well in the next few years, and see how would I sort of get that under my belt or add that feather to my cap somehow.
Okay. So for people who are entering the profession today or looking at how they should proceed. The reason I'm bringing this up is because in India, one of the issues that colleges are facing is that the core engineering disciplines, which is mechanical, civil, electrical, electronic, are almost it's almost as if IT and computer science are the only streams that attract the most number of people. And even the regular streams, people tend to finish that and then go in for coding or get into IT.
Yeah.
So, what is your take on somebody who's entering the profession or doing engineering today? Is it that if you like it, what are the options available to you, and how do you decide on what you should be doing next?
Yeah, I think coding and software and a lot of these engineering, I guess, roles that are out there could be pretty attractive, I guess, if you want to spend a lot of time in front of the computer and, like long hours. But I think engineering as a whole, mechanical wise, it's still, there's a lot more roles, opportunities out there, like, hydraulics, for example, instrumentation, pneumatics, a lot of different aspects, I guess, of engineering, which people can still tap into, which are some of the fields that are kind of getting neglected, or I guess a lot of people, I think, are kind of getting into a bit of a comfort zone or comfort level where they like the software sides of things. And, like design engineering, I guess, is another one which a lot of people do enjoy because it's in front of the computer and then you can see a lot of
Right.
moving parts and then you can simulate that. But I think one of the things could be for an engineer who is still working or studying or in the final year or starting off, there's a lot more moving parts around you. And I think if you're interested and if you're willing to kind of like get your hands dirty, there's a lot more opportunities out there. And I think one of the things again in engineering is like no job is small. So like whether it be your laborer working or whether you're a factory worker or like a guy who's just hammering a certain thing, there's a lot more science and engineering into that as well, which step by step as a graduate engineer can really understand. And if you can understand that, that would really help you grow as a career wise as well in mechanical engineering. I think that
Yeah.
will be key.
Great. It's been wonderful talking to you, Vaibhav. So, in conclusion, would you like to send out a message to people on what is it that they can concentrate on and what your own career, if it's a look back at your own career, and what is it that you would like to tell people who are looking to understand how they should proceed?
Yeah, I would say mechanical engineering again is like there's a lot of options, there's a lot of opportunities. People do tend to think like automation is taking on the world, and there's a lot of opportunities. And I think that's one thing could be a key message for a lot of people. If you can have that dual sort of engineering where you can do mechatronics, that would help you in future roles as automation and AI does come in. But yeah, mechanical engineering still would always be one of those evergreen subjects and evergreen roles. And if you're willing to sort of get amongst the nitty gritty of things and understand how mechanics work or how fluid mechanics work or solid mechanics work in practicality, that would really help you grow as a person in engineering role.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Vaibhav, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. And thank you for expanding on how you approached your career, what are the kind of challenges you faced, and where you see the future developing. All
Thank
the
you so
best
much.
for the future. Thank you
Really
very
nice having
much.
you here. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. That was Vaibhav Garg, and he's told us about how he qualified in mechanical engineering, something that he liked doing, and he's continued to excel in that field. He's found the job that he likes. He's doing work that he enjoys. He thinks there's wonderful work-life balance that has worked out, which is essentially what a career should be. Next week, another interesting guest, another interesting career journeys. Until then, keep watching, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, as always, for listening.